Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker betting show. This is a Cheltenham preview in more ways than one. I'm your host, George Elek, and I'm delighted to be joined by Oddschecker's very own tipster, Andy Holding, as ever, and Ed Quigley. One of the big stories around Racing Ed is going to be who's going to make their seasonal reappearance first. You or Constitution Hill. We've wrapped you up in cotton wool for the last couple of months. We decided to release you at your hometown track at Cheltenham for this weekend. Ed, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, I've been in my 7 Barrows bubble wrap for I'm out now, and very much looking forward to it. It's all just starting to go up a notch, isn't it? We've seen some excellent racing so far this season, some brilliant performances, and obviously the King George being the main highlight of Christmas, so that's on the horizon as well, and just lots to look forward to at this time of year.
Absolutely, and I kind of joke about the testing conditions and the rest of it, but you do live just by the racecourse at Cheltenham, so can you give us a bit of insight into ahead of the racing on Friday and Saturday? How is it looking? We're recording just before midday on Thursday. Yeah,
it's going to take some getting, George. I say it was pretty much a bit of drizzle this morning. It was dry mainly yesterday, but a shed load of rain. I'm sure the clerk of the course will give you something more specific than that in terms of, but yeah, all last weekend, Monday, just absolutely launched it down. So, at the time of this recording, it's soft on the new course at Cheltenham. Obviously, fresh ground, new course, hasn't been raced on, but it's going to be, especially with the greater emphasis on stamina on the new course compared to the old course, it's going to take some getting. If you want to see out 2.5 miles, you need to be able to see out 3 miles in layman's terms, I think. So, anything with you want spring ground or an easy test, then, don't bother turning up.
Indeed. Andy, how are you doing at the moment? Are you going to be at the course on Saturday with Ed?
Yeah, it's a possibility. A few moving parts for me to sort of definitely confirm that. But, the plan is maybe to be there Saturday. Looks a good card. Some decent betting opportunities, proper winter ground. So with the weather forecast looking fair, according to Ed, then looks a proper national hunt day.
Absolutely does indeed. Right, let's get into the show, but a bit of a twist on what we normally do. We're going to go through the card on Saturday. We're going to leave Friday's racing. Just because by the time this goes out, it'll be pretty quick to date and to age. So we're going to focus on Saturday. But before we do that, given that it's Cheltenham this weekend, we thought we would have a quick look ahead to March. Of course, it is only mid-December. There are lots of moving parts, but Ante-Post betting is obviously very popular with people, especially ahead of the Cheltenham Festival. So I've asked Andy and Ed to come up with their NAP, their next best, and their long shot. So their best bet, their next best bet, and then one at a bigger price for us ahead of March. So 6 bets in total to come. And Andy, as the resident, will give you first selection. And it's in the Arkle, where we've got current joint favourites of Facile Vega and Marine Nationale, who are both 11-4. In the pockets, 12-1. Gaelic Warrior, 14-1. Mr. Policeman, 16-1. These are all best prices on the Oddschecker app, which you should download to get the best prices, free bets. Bookie offers and place terms and Andy's tips straight to the app every morning of racing, amongst other tipsters as well. It's one of those two at the top of the market, isn't it, Andy? Which one are you picking, Facile Vega or Marine Nationale?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, this, because I'm tipping a horse who's yet to run over fences. So that would normally go against the grain with regards to what I do, obviously base everything on times and current form, if you like. But there's no real reason to think that Marine Nationale won't uphold the form with Facile Vega in the pocket and Elek if he does take to the larger obstacles. And reading Barry Connell's comments in the Racing Post of the day, he could be even better over fence. And that's a really mouth-watering prospect, isn't it? Because he was a very flashy winner of what looked a very good Supreme last year. The time figure backed it up. And the subsequent form of all those horses he beat that day have gone on to suggest that he is very much top-notch. They were going to run him the other day in a beginner's chase somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it was, but the ground was heavy, so they withdrew him. They're now going to wait until Leopardstown over the Christmas period, December the 27th to be precise. And it's going to be at that point where Facile Vega's already had a run over fences, will run in the Racing Post Chase, which is a Grade 1. He'll probably win that, because I think he's already 1-2 to win that, and it looks as though he'll probably have a small field. So we'll get some kind of guide barometer into their respective capabilities over fences albeit one's in a grade, one's in a beginner's chase, because they'll both run over the course and distance at that 4-day meeting. I would then imagine that they'll meet in the Irish Arkle at the Dublin Racing Festival, and it'll be then when we'll see which one's the best of the two, having both had at least a run under their belts over fences, and then onto the Arkle itself at Cheltenham. So I think the landscape of the betting will definitely change accordingly at that Leopardstown next meeting, but even more so in February. So I'm kind of preempting how this market's going to go. And I'm hoping that Marine National will beat Facile Vega, because if he does, then I think he'd be a very short price to win the Arkle. So 11.4 at the moment, just about value. It's not something I'd normally do, looking to tip a horse so short at this price, at this current stage. But a lot of the other horses I could have included into this podcast, their sort of plans are fluid, and there's one horse that has actually not even been quoted by one firm who have priced the race up as well, which I'll probably get onto in a second when we do perhaps a little bit of a final summary at the end of it, because I can't do this podcast without mentioning him. So the first one's Marine National in the Arkle, and I think that 11-4 looked good. Probably, if not a month's time, but maybe at least 2 months' time.
Ed, any of you on the Arkle market? I'm not going to ask you to take on Andy's selection, but
no, one I've stayed clear of at the moment, but I just think Willie Mullins' quote was quite funny, saying hopefully he can have 4 or 5 runners in the Arkle, considering it'll probably be a 6-runner race. It'll be almost become it could easily be Marine National versus, couldn't it? Because there's is it Elek Tomp is probably lined up in there. There's Mr. Policeman, either 2.5 miles. It's just it's the Irish benefit race, isn't it, really? Paul Nicholls, Nicky Henderson without an obvious 2-mile novice chaser at the moment. So, yeah, look, hopefully we love these matches, don't we, in racing? And hopefully it turns up to a rematch of the last year's Supreme over fences again. So it would be something very much to look forward to in 89 days, George. Yeah, not long now.
Not long now, TM. Now, Andy, you said you were going to mention that horse when we did a summary. I think we're going to move on from the Arkle now, so I think you better do it now. Otherwise, we're going to miss it.
Yeah, it's a horse I've had on my radar for a little while now. I tipped him the other day in my column, but I'm a massive Inch House fan, trained by John Joe. Now, knowing how John Joe operates, he hasn't actually said or gone on record to say what race he's got in mind for this horse further down the line. But given how he campaigned Monbeg Genius last season, to finish, I think, second in the Ultima, I'd be absolutely staggered if Inch House doesn't work his way up into that sort of bracket. He's already had 3 runs over fences. He's improved with every run. He jumps, he travels. He's got a huge amount of class, a huge engine, and I think the better the race he runs in, the better he'll be. I could see a sort of 20-runner field at Cheltenham suiting him absolutely down to the ground come March. I think he might have 1 straight, maybe 2 more runs before then. I think he was entered up over the weekend, but I don't think he runs. So they might just save him for something over Christmas. But I think he's a graded horse in waiting. But while he's still eligible to run in handicaps, and I think he's in the 130s at the moment.
137, yeah.
137. He might, like I say, he might well win one more. He'll get it sort of like in and around the 140 mark, which will easily get him into the Ultima. But there's only one firm which is Unibet betting on the Ultima, so they're not even priced him up, because I don't think they've quite got the foresight that perhaps predicting where Inch House will end up. But I'd see him going off favourite for the Ultima. But they're the only firm betting on the moment, so it's pointless me tipping A, a horse that isn't even quoted, and B, that there's only one firm betting on it. But once that market begins to sort of work itself out, we can record this, or we can play this recording back sometime in February or March and say, well, it was a bit of a told you so, because I do think Inch House is the sort of one of my better Ante-Post fancies for a handicap at Cheltenham at this stage.
Yeah, I think I misunderstood what you said there, Andy. Well, we will be talking about Inch House, I think, later on in the show. Obviously entered in on Saturday at Cheltenham, but there Andy's given us a notebook horse as well as a nap and a next best and a long shot. Over to Ed now for your nap. And, you know, it's easy as you like. Just got to pick the Gold Cup winner, haven't you, Ed? Looking at the Gold Cup, we've got Galopin de Champ is the 3-1 favourite. Jerry Colomb, 4-1. Fast or Slow, 6-1. Long Press, 16-1. Shishkin, 20-1. Brave Man's Game, 20-1. And 25-1 bar those. But it's Jerry Colomb second in the market at this current moment, 4-1 with a few firms. Who's your nap of the festival 4 months in advance?
Absolutely. Well, you did ask me for a nap during Royal Ascot, George, and I gave you Jerry Colombe, and I'm staying along with that here. I'm very much on Team Jerry. Just the staying chase division is slowly but surely just started to fall apart a bit, isn't it? When you look at the market and take the emotion out of it, look at it in the cold hard kind of light of day. I mean, the Galopin de Champs, yes, the defending champion has to be respected, but he's lost his last 2 races. You got Fast or Slow, again, who I do respect, who seems to be on an upward curve, rising through the handicap ranks. Outside of that, I mean, your 4 favourites currently Long Press. I mean, Venetia Williams was quite downbeat, saying possibly they could get him to the Cotswold Chase, but it sounds like, originally it was Newbury, then it was the King George. He's not making it to track anytime soon. And then your 5th favourite, Shishkin, who could be closer retirement than he could be winning a Gold Cup if he makes the mess of a start again. You actually start going through it. Everyone goes, oh, it's going to be a huge field, lots of great runners. The actual candidates are few and far between when you actually, you kind of look at it forensically. And whereas Jerry Colombe, the one thing he has got is a massive amount of upside still to him. There are a few in here, say the likes of Long Press, Shishkin, Brave Man's Game. They're not, the evidence is they're not getting any better at their age, or at least to plateaus. Whereas Jerry Colombe, has just that one defeat to his name by the Real Whacker, who jumped superbly on the day at Cheltenham. And funny enough, I think that the Real Whacker could play a part in the King George, where it sounds like Jerry Colombe will be running in. So, yeah, I just think everything's going to be right for Jerry Colombe. He's unexposed. The 3.25 miles on the new course can only suit him, if you see what I'm saying. The old course in the Brown Advisory last year, to get within the short head of the Real Whacker, I think it was in an environment that did particularly suit him, but the extra 2 furlongs, the new course, be absolutely fine. I'm half and half surprised. It sounds like they are going to bring him to Kempton for the King George, because I don't think it's really his track. But then I said, to be blunt and crass, I think the Gordon Elliott team are looking at the King George again and thinking, we've got a 5-6 runner race here, where, as you say, your favourite Brave Man's Game's lost his last 4 races. Allaho potentially is rising 10. Shishkin might not run. There's not as much strength and depth as kind of social media would lead you to believe, in my view. And I think connections to Jerry Colombe are probably thinking, although kind of tight right-handed track round Kempton's probably not his scene, he's only got to stand up to be in the top 3 at least, if you see what I'm saying. And so, all in all, what I'm trying to say is, even if Jerry Colombe doesn't win the King George and gets a little bit outpaced around there, that wouldn't put me off at all, his claims for the Cheltenham Gold Cup. I remember Gordon Elliott running Don Cossack a few years ago. Obviously was looked outpaced, was starting to hit top gear, and then crashed out in the closing stages, then went on to win the Gold Cup, funny enough. And I probably kind of see Jerry Colombe in a similar type of mould here. And so win, lose or draw, I said, if he gets well beaten at Kempton, he could drift again. But I expect to be playing a part here. And I just don't think there's a lot of strength and depth in the 3 mile plus chase division. Could easily be a single field. And Jerry Colombe, just a 1 defeat to his name. I just think he's got everything you want about a Cheltenham Gold Cup winner. And I'd fancy him to easily turn the form round with the Real Whacker at Cheltenham on the new course over 3.25 miles. Kempton might be a slightly different story, but Jerry for me, I'm sticking with him. And just the final point on this, the 3 mile chase division, it was kind of floated around perhaps whether last season's Gold Cup had left its mark, and there may be some truth in that sentiment. As I said, like Brave Man's Game's been beaten every run since. Obviously, Galopin de Champs been turned over twice by Fast or Slow, and it could just have jaded a few of those protagonists, whereas it's the fresh blood, the newcomer, I'm looking forward to. Yeah, so Jerry Colombe for me, he's very much my nap of the 2024 Cheltenham Festival.
Love that. And the 2024 Royal Ascot as well. Jerry Colombe, 4-1. Paddy's 888 Sport, Betfair, Sportsbook, Bet Victor, plenty of other firms up on the oddschecker grids, 4-1 about Jerry Colombe. Andy, where do you sit at this current stage? I know you'll have a view on the Gold Cup next year. How do you see it? As Ed said, it doesn't at this stage look to be a race with massive depth.
Yeah, I could have easily put Jerry Colombe on the list, but obviously Ed had already picked it. So because obviously we had a chance of seeing what each other was going to go for. I'd back Jerry Colombe as well for the Gold Cup. I took a view after last year's RSA brand advisor, whatever you want to call it, that he was the up and coming star in this category. And I was quite impressed with his victory at Down Royal. A lot of people weren't, but not many horses would have won from the position he was in or got himself into at the County Down track. And, you know, he was beating horses who were A, fitter than him, and B, proving it at that kind of level at this time of year. I think he'd win that race 10 times out of 10 with a run under his belt, you know, every day of the week. So I thought it was a massive plus rather than a negative. He'll probably win at Kempton. I wouldn't have any problems with it going right, you know, with going over a tight track, because, you know, he was really good on the figures when he won at Sandown over 2 mile 4, and he showed plenty of speed that day, and at Aintree for that matter. So I think he's got a lot of bases and boxes ticked, Jerry Colombe. And yeah, you could just imagine 3 mile 2 at Cheltenham suiting him right down to the ground. So yeah, hard to see beyond him as well at the moment.
There we go. We've got the Andy Holding seal of approval there on Ed's nap, Jerry Colombe for the Gold Cup. Andy, your next best is in the Ryanair. Well, Allaho is the 130 favourite ahead of Stage Star at 4-1. John Bon, obviously, John Bon 11-1. Unlikely to turn up here. 14-1. Envoy Allen, Appreciate It 16-1. Conflated 16-1. El Fabiolo 16-1. Banbridge 16-1. 20-1. Bar those. I mean, this is, Andy, when you kind of run. I mean, obviously the prices in the market is to a very high margin, so it doesn't work quite as simply as that. When you run through the top, however many of this market now, how many can you be confident are going to be lining up in the Ryanair?
Exactly. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I chose this race. Basically, we've got 2 standout performers over 2.5 miles at either side of the RSC. We have Allaho, who obviously didn't make the gig last year through injury. Prior to that, he looked almost unbeatable around Cheltenham, putting in 2 incredibly dominant performances on the new course, and that has been his target ever since, you know, they sort of got him back in and got him back to full health. I wasn't blown away by his performance, however, on his seasonal reappearance at Clonmel, and it was a day where we had a like-for-like comparison as well with the Mayor's Chase won by Allegor de Vassy. Now, Allegor de Vassy's time figure was miles better than Allaho. I thought Allaho looked a little bit laboured, if anything. Now, look, it was his first run for a while. I know he wasn't fully wound up and all that jazz, but I would have just liked to see a little bit more spark. And time will tell. Look, he could easily get back to the level we saw. It is early days yet. Look, you know, that he's not going to be all guns blazing in the middle of November when, you know, March is his target, and Willie will no doubt have left plenty to work with. But I do think Stage Star is a hugely talented individual who's 3 for 3 over fences at Cheltenham, and based on his victory in the Paddy Power, I think he's very much the one to beat for me at this current moment in time. I think 4-1 standout price in the village is really generous, because I'd see these 2 being 6, 7 or 4 each or 2, 7 or 4, 2-1 on the day. That kind of betting, because I don't think, as you just said, there's going to be a huge amount of strength in depth with the likes of John Bon, Envoy Allen, Conflated going elsewhere, Fabiolo going down the Arkle route, maybe Banbridge if he does something in between times. But for now, I think Stage Star is definitely the horse to concentrate on from this side of the RSC. He got taken on in the Paddy Power as well. I don't know what Ed thought, but for him to brush those horses to one side and then recover from that bad mistake at the last, which is a slither on landing more than anything else, and still power clear of some good horses, you know, let's face it, you know, got Long-Tail Maze at a high class horse, and all those sort of like fugitives and Il Ridotos of this world are really good, hardy, solid handicappers that always run to a good level around Cheltenham. I thought it was a fantastic effort. But come rain or shine, whatever ground, small field, big field, he can pretty much handle whatever's thrown at him. So it'll be a joust for the lead if they do go there on the day. But I think Stage Star, with sort of like fresher, more youthful legs on decent ground on the 3rd day of the meeting, he'd be very, very difficult to catch around there. So yeah, I think 4-1 for Stage Star. That's got to be considered as a reasonably good bet, even at this stage.
Ed, Andy's trying to repeat your trick from last year, isn't he? Picking apart the Ryanair that was falling apart, and, you know, wasn't it Blue Lord that you gave us at a big price that ended up going off 11-2?
Yeah, 33 to 1. I tipped him up. It went off 11 to 2 and came last. Yeah. But
no,
yeah, you're right.
Not last. Chacun pour soi.
But no, I beat the book, but didn't beat the bookie. But you're right. It's to say the Ryanair, gets its critics, whatever. But naturally, Gold Cup, Champion Chase, horses go either way, and it's going to leave a 7-8 runner field. Banbridge is the joker in the pack in here. I do think if they could. For once, I mean, Joseph O'Brien's been joking about, like, every time they enter him up, the meeting gets called off. He was actually in at the Peterborough Chase, wasn't he? Which the heavy ground came on decent ground. I do think he's not far behind those. I actually would fancy him on good ground. Don't forget, Allaho will be 10 next year, won't he? If I've got my maths right, I'd fancy on good ground Banbridge perhaps to get the better of Allaho, but Stage Star is very much the horse who's, you say, rising through the ranks. If he hadn't have made that Horlicks of the last. In the Paddy Power, you would have been saying he won a race 10 lengths on the Schnaff off 155. I mean, that would have been, ifs, buts, and maybes. But the point being, it just confirms his superiority, how he could have made that mistake and recovered and still gone up the hill and got the job done. So, yeah, it's the Ryanair has won a race I'm fairly lukewarm on at the moment. But it's just invariably that will cut up to a smallish field. And again, we've been speaking about matches, how we like those. We want Al Fabiolo, John Bon, we want Gallopin Deschamps, Jerry Calamo, etc. Well, Allaho Stage Star on the Thursday would be an absolute belter.
Absolutely would be. Team Stage Star at the moment for Andy, 4 to 1. Ed, we'll stick with you for your next best. Looking at the Mares Hurdle now, where Lossiemouth is the 11 to 4 favourite, ahead of Gala Marceau at 8 to 1. Ashrow Diamond also 8 to 1. Although short is kind of 5 to 1 elsewhere. That 8 to 1 standout. Echoes and Rain 14 to 1. Love Envoy 14 to 1. 16 to 1 Bar. But it's that horse at 8 to 1 that you're interested in here, Ed. Gala Marceau.
Yeah, I'd be against the favourite here, Lossiemouth. It's just a fascinating market, mainly because very few of those at the top of the market have actually run this season. And being Lossiemouth, obviously being your 11 to 4 standout price. Willie Mullins in his bulletin the other day, Rich Ritchie, saying that they may even contemplate giving her one run and going straight to the festival. And similar sentiment we could have with Gala Marceau, my pick as well here, George. I'm not worried about that prep for the mares with Willie Mullins. He went into quite a bit of detail. I'm not going to bore you all with, but what he was saying is his view was he thought racing at the top level takes a lot more out of mares than it does out of some of the bigger, stronger horses he's got in his yard. And he said, he worked out in the early stage of his career, which was why Q Vega rocked up first time out to the Mares Hurdle and won 6 of them. And he used to get a lot of critique for it, but he said it was a lot easier to take a mare there fresh and get them to win first time out than perhaps some of those big stuffy individuals that needed 3 or 4 runs. I just thought it was fascinating insight, really. So what I'm saying is, wouldn't be shocked if Lossiemouth, Gala Marceau, a couple of others in the yard go to the festival with just perhaps one spin under their belts. And over 2.5 miles, I think Gala Marceau, I mean, she's 3 times the price of Lossiemouth. And obviously she saw Lossiemouth's backside on a few occasions last year, but they were on races where there was a greater emphasis of speed over a shorter trip. I was really taken by Gala Marceau's performance in France, in the French champion hurdle, when she stepped up to 2.5 for the first time on soft ground. She absolutely annihilated them. Now, I know people are saying, end of season form, French form, blah, 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 blah. But there is quite a bit of robustness to that run. She had Zarek the Brave absolutely coming home, needing a breathalyzer, 12 lengths back in third. And then Zarek the Brave came out and won the Galway hurdle off 1:45. So that's a fair effort she's put up there to beat off that field. And I think with the greater emphasis on stamina, put it this way, if the Mares Hurdle was 2 miles, again, Lossiemouth, she's got much more the turn of foot. She's, inverted commas, the classier type. If we got a bit of a wet weekend before the Cheltenham Festival and you got soft ground on the opening day, over 2.5, I think the gap between Lossiemouth and Gala Marceau really starts to narrow. And I think the pendulum could easily swing to Gala Marceau over 2.5 miles. I think in time, they might, maybe next season, they look at something like the Stayers Hurdle type route with her, because I think she's going to be a proper stayer at the trip. So Gala Marceau, unexposed. I actually spoke to Danny Mullins last week, because I did just question this. When you don't see these horses, you just start to wonder. He said, no, she's absolutely flying. They'll look for something kind of Christmas time, January, perhaps the Dublin Racing Festival, maybe just one run, and then to the Mares Hurdle. And so, yeah, naturally, a lot of people are Lossiemouth, and with good reason on the overall balance of the form from last year. But as I said, over 2.5, it could be a different proposition. And everyone harps on about spring ground as a final point. Well, I think, 4 of the last 5 Cheltenham festivals have been run on soft, haven't they? Or at least started on the opening day on that type of thing. So that wouldn't be an inconvenience to Gala Marceau whatsoever. So, I think 8-1. I think she's a standout value. And similar to what Andy was talking about with the Ryanair, this race, again, this will kind of filter down, won't it? You have a few of them end up thinking we'll roll the dice in the stairs with the mayor's allowance. You have a couple may try and pick up the pieces in the champion hurdle route for place money if that ends up being a 4 or 5 runner race with Constitution Hill scaring everyone off. And whereas Gala Marceau over 2.5, 8-1, I think she's fair play. She's fair cop.
8-1, Gala Marceau there for Ed, which is pretty much available with all firms on the oddschecker grids. A couple of 7-1, but that 8-1 is readily available for those who want it. Andy, any view on the mares?
Not at this stage, no. What we're talking about mares, though, and particularly horses who run in France, that leads me to mention a horse, should she come over from France to contest the mares novices. I think UK punters will definitely need to take note of a horse called July Flower, who used to be trained by Henry de Bromhead, finished 9th in the mares bumper at Aintree behind Darsart Enos, but she pulled way too hard that day. But since she's gone to France, she's looked an absolutely totally different model. I just happened to be doing some sort of figures for Montoy one day, and sort of bloodstock agent. As you do. Yeah, was asking me to do a card for him because he was looking at this French horse to buy. And I said, well, I don't know what that horse that you were after's about. I said, but you want to keep an eye on this July Flower, who recorded an astonishing time, which she won first time for New Connections. And then she went back there and put in an astonishing performance. She must have been 20 lengths behind turning for home, and she still managed to win. The turn of foot she showed was incredible. And then she got beat the other day by one of France's up-and-coming bright young stars. He's a gelding. I can't remember his name, but...
Losange Bleu.
That's the one, yeah. He's a proper Grade 1 horse. But again, the front two pull well clear, and the mare to take on a really good gelding like that and give him a real good race on bottomless ground was a massively eye-catching run. She probably needs soft ground for Connections maybe to entertain her at Cheltenham, but she's 50-1 for the mare's novices. I think some of the UK horses and Irish horses get the fright of their life if this July Flower comes over. So yeah, she's definitely one that I'm keeping my eye on. But it's one of those ones where nearer the time when the entries come, if she gets an entry in it, then I'd probably, that'd spark my interest. But at the moment, yeah, I'm just sort of monitoring how a sort of campaign pans out.
Yeah, July Flower 50-1 there with Paddy Power, Betfair Sportsbook, BetVictor, Unibet and others, Betway included there in the mare's novice for Andy. Another bonus selection is treating us today. On to the long shots now, and we're going to look at the Triumph hurdle to start with, Andy. I'll just get the page up now. We have got, your selection here is Nürburgring. Is that how we're saying it?
Yeah, named after the famous German Grand Prix circuit.
There we go. You can tell that I'm not a Grand Prix fan.
I think it was the track that Nicky Lauda suffered that horrific
really?
injury many years ago. Yeah.
Well, I've now got the page up, and Nürburgring is 25-1. That's best price with Bet365 as short as 14-1 elsewhere. What is it about Nürburgring that has you excited ahead of the Triumph?
Yeah, well, we're looking for a long shot. Obviously, you're trying to tip something that is a little bit under the radar and UK punters haven't quite conned onto yet. And sort of courtesy of the numbers that we keep, my ears have been pricked up by Nürburgring's performance when he beat a horse called Carlo Conti the other day. Now, Carlo Conti had already won the time before at Down Raw for Gordon Elliott, set off in front, went a really good gallop. It was a strong race. There was plenty of fancied horses. Willie Mullins had 2 in there, 1 for the double green. And there was plenty of others who were winning form and good solid place form. And Nürburgring basically outstayed the lot of them. Won in a very fast time. It was worth pointing out he won the same race as well last year that Lossiemouth won. So I do think that race is definitely worth a second look. He clocked a much quicker time than Lossiemouth did when she won the race last year. So straight away I'm thinking, this is a good race. They were miles clear of the rest. And stamina seems to be his key component because he took him an age to wear down that good filly or mare of Gordon Elliott's the time before at Listowel, Woodoo, the one that won at Aintree the other day. So he's got a little bit of everything. He's won on soft, stroke heavy. He won on good ground when he won at Listowel, a sharp track. Like I say, he seemed to stay a really healthily run 2 miles on a stiffer track, much better next time. I'd imagine that Joseph will probably come over here for one of the trial races over here. I think there's one. Ed would probably tell me. I think there's one either on trials day, maybe the Christmas meeting. I'm not totally sure whether there is one at the Christmas meeting or the New Year meeting. I beg your pardon. But he looks a candidate that might go to the trials day one. Yeah, I think UK punters will become a little bit more accustomed to Nürburgring as time goes on. I also like Mighty Bandit as well. I'll definitely mention him while I'm actually talking about this race. He also won in a fast time when he won at Fairyhouse the other day. And I noticed the horse that finished third to him has won since, a horse called Harsh, who went to court the other day. So that form line is looking pretty solid. I actually put up both of these 2 horses on my column the other day that they asked me to do. It's like a novice hurdle run through. So if anyone who's got a little bit of minute want to read through that, my thoughts at the early stage of sort of all the different categories, the Supreme, the Ballymore and the Triumph, they're all on there. I'm only really repeating myself with the ring. But yeah, I think 25 to 1 is massively underestimating what he's already achieved. Much more than Burdett Road, put it that way. It was 5 to 1.
Great stuff. 25 to 1. That's stand out with Bet365 about Nürburgring in the Triumph Hurdle. Andy's long shot. Before we get to Saturday's racing at Cheltenham, we've just got Ed's long shot to go, and we're off to the Stayers, where we've got Tiapu is the 4 to 1 favourite, but we're going all the way down to 33 to 1. And Springwell Bay, an impressive winner back in November at Cheltenham, Ed, clearly caught your eye.
Yeah, absolutely. John Joe O'Neill's individual here, as you say, lumped round 12 stone on soft ground. And was a little bit keen in the early stages of that race. But then what I was really impressed with was usually when you've seen a horse fail to settle for the first mile on soft ground, when push comes to shove, there's not a great deal under the bonnet. But it looked like the leaders were closing. The leaders were going to kind of swamp him, but he found more for pressure, didn't he? And he really took off up the hill. And just listening to George O'Neill's quote, the horse has gone up to 143 now. He says we're going to forget handicaps. And we're going to kind of tilt at windmills a bit with him because he thinks the division looks so wide open, which it does. When you bear in mind your favourite's Tehupu, who's going straight to the festival. He couldn't beat an 11-year-old last year. Your second favourite is Talem, who looks brilliant in France, but you've got to take that in context. This is a horse who's yet to race away from Auteuil in heavy ground. Then after, you got West Balboa, who's going to go to Ascot next weekend. West Balboa won a handicap off 143 last time out. You've then got 12-year-old side of Burley. And then you're into Sunday again. Everyone goes, oh, you actually start looking at it. There aren't. The Stayers Hurdle division has gone very kind of dead wood, for want of a better phrase, not wishing to try and upset anyone. But, your Paisley Parks, your Dashel Drashers, your Cider Burleys, all still running around in circles. And it's open for younger individuals. I can make a case for Sir Gerhard because I gather he's going 3 miles and hurdles over Christmas. And I could see a bit of mileage in his price at 20 to 1 because he does have excellent hurdles form at Cheltenham and he clearly can't jump fences. But Springwell Bay, on an upward curve, handles any ground. Clearly, he's got Cheltenham form, and they're going to roll the dice, according to connections, on New Year's Day in the Railkeel Hurdle, where it sounds like Bob Ollinger's coming over, Marie's Rocks dropping back to 2.5. That'll be a small field. And John Joe said, look, a quote from John Joe, I hope we've got a new Blackjack Ketchum on our hands. We won't go 3 miles yet, but if he can win the Railkeel Hurdle, then he'll probably book his ticket to the festival. So they'll chance his arm over 3 on the big day, if you like, if he can serve it up to those horses on New Year's Day. But again, it's the similar angle we were discussing earlier on in the show, that the history of the Cheltenham Festival would tell you that often it's the fresh blood coming through you want. You do get your old your romantic story, don't you, of your Sprinter Sacre rolling back the years, or Moscow Flyer getting the job done at 11. But look, I get it to Hupu by default as favourite. But there's not lots of candidates springing out of here. And I wouldn't be shocked, just to say, if something left of field, which is improving, jumps into the frame. Just a final point on Springwell Bay. It was actually interesting looking back, the horse More of That. If you go back 10 years or so ago, ended up beating Annie Power. Funny enough, won a handicap off 137 to start his season off before going on to win the Stayers Hurdle. Well, that's what Springwell Bay did when winning at Cheltenham the other day. So, it can be done. And John Joe knows how to get the job done with that type of horse, is what I'm saying. And, those famous colours of Blackjack Ketchum obviously won the Albert Bartlett, then fortunately fluffed his lines in that infamous fall at the second, with left AP McCoy in tears 15 years or so ago. But Springwell Bay, I'm hoping essentially New Year's Day, I'll be there with a mighty old hangover. If he can get the job done and see off Bob Ollinger and Marie's Rock, then he's booked his ticket to the Stayers Hurdle. And as I said, he's the young up-and-comer, and his pedigree suggests 3 miles should be no problem once he learns to settle.
Lovely stuff. Springwell Bay, the other one for Ed. And Andy, any view on the Stayers?
Yeah, I've had a small interest on Crambo. I almost put this horse onto the list. I went with Nürburgring because that was a little bit more solid, or there's a little bit more solidity by him winning a Grade 3 and proving himself as a genuine Triumph Hurdle candidate, whereas Crambo hasn't quite got to that level yet. But I do think, along with Ed, with his tip on Springwell Bay, that there is going to be a floater coming along from this side of the Irish Sea to sort of put their marker down. I think we'll get to see that in next week's Long Walk, because I think Crambo's in it. And I think he's in it with a big chance, because he wants an absolute end-to-end 3-mile gallop. He didn't quite get that the other day at Haydock. Haydock wasn't his track. But boy, oh boy, didn't he finish off his race. I mean, he hit about 3 or 4 mid-race crises before taking off on the running. I think it would have been Cheltenham, let's say, that race. He would have won that race easily. So I know connections are thinking about Stayers Hurdle for him, that they've backed him. They've already earmarked as that's the race, that the handicaps have just been used as a stepping stone. I think Grand Cru won that race. I think that race that Slate House won many moons ago, before he had the battles with the great French horse. The good horse for Nichols is that won it 2 or 3 years on the spin.
Big Bucks.
Big Bucks, yeah. So it can be done. Ed's already pointed out, more of that. Those kind of horses coming through, they can develop at such a rate of knots where they're soon develop into graded horses. And, in a weak category where it's open for something to come through and really stamp its mark, I think Crambo is another one to consider.
Crambo, another one to put on the list, 25-1 best price. That's with William Hill, Betfred and BetMGM and BetUK on the oddschecker grids. As short as 18-1 elsewhere. Right, that's our preview for the Cheltenham Festival to start this Cheltenham preview podcast. Now we get to look ahead to Saturday's racing. These are prices kind of hot off the press, I guess, given that it's just after midday on Thursday, so final decks just in. We don't have prices in the first race, which is the Juvenile Hurdle, or in the Handicap Chase, which is the second race. And I'll start with you, especially because of the opener. Any standing out that people should look out for when prices do come out?
Not especially. I think if you fancy Burdett Road, you'll be hoping on Brandon Fisa runs well, because he chased home James Owen's horse at the Paddy Power meeting. I'm just a little bit underwhelmed by the whole level of the UK form, like I have been for the last 2 or 3 years. That's why I'm looking to always tip an Irish horse in the Triumph. They've dominated for the last decade, and I think they'll do it again. Obviously, Paul Nicholls runs Cabral de Martin, who won in France. He did it workmanlike when he won his race over in France. So I just don't know enough about these horses. None of them have done any big numbers to get me excited. And the Handicap Chase, I mean, I don't know what Ed thinks, but that's a tough one, that is.
I like twisters in that.
Yeah,
we've all been caught. And into Handicap, I see Michael O'Sullivan's booked to ride as well, claiming the 3. Fascinating jockey booking, obviously Marine National's jockey. Interesting. I don't know if he's ever ridden for Nigel before, but claiming another 3. So in theory, off 1-3-2 in a handicap on soft ground around Cheltenham, I thought kind of now or never for him off that type of mark. And I think he's just called to Tartar, hasn't he, last time out? I mean, he's beaten 3 lengths by Florin Porter 2 starts ago, and then bumped into Broadway Boy, who's one of the most progressive novice chasers around last time out. So in context, I thought off 1-3-2, he'd probably be the play at around 4-1, 9-2, something like that was my tissue.
Yeah, you're probably right. I just haven't got an overly strong view really on the first 2 races, which is probably just as well because we've got our prices. So there you go.
Should we get into the races that we can talk about the prices in? Let's get to the quintessentially Handicap Chase, which is the 115 over an extended 2 miles. In Excelsis Deo is the 2-1 favourite ahead of Calico at 9-4. Fun and Bull Savola 13-2. Ocon Risk 7-1. Prince Escalus 12-1. 14-1 Madara. 25-1 Baron de Middleton. 7 run here, Andy. You got prices. Who's the bet?
I think Excelsis Deo or In Excelsis Deo is definitely the bet. He was down to running the December handicap later on the card over 2.5. He looked as though he wants 2.5 based on his run here the other day at Cheltenham when he was a massive eye catcher behind Dancing on My Own, which I think was a stronger race than the race that Calico was second in behind Triple Trade. Triple Trade was in that Dancing on My Own race, but I think collectively that was it was a deeper race. You had Not Long Till May in fourth, who obviously went on to run well in the Paddy Power. But Harry Fry's horse just looked all at sea coming down the hill, and then once he met the rising ground, he really picked up. But my overriding impression with him was what he won AS stiffer test, i.e. 2.5, or softer ground. The ground was just on the good side that day, and that probably just caught him out more than anything else. But I don't think a horse like Calico will get away from Excelsis Deo this time. And if he's anywhere near Calico, he's sure to lead, turning for home, then I think he'll just outstay them. So I think Harry Fry's got a nice, progressive, young 2-mile handicapper on his hands there.
And Excelsis Deo 2-1, making the appeal to Andy. Ed, how do you see it?
I'm pretty lukewarm on this race, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously Princess Scarless, I thought ran it was a massive return to form in context last time out, where, as you say, that Triple Trade race at Cheltenham. The worry for him is he likes to kind of dominate, kind of boss a small field, which in theory should work fine here. But as Andy says, there's pace on galore. We haven't even mentioned Funnable Civilo, who likes to bowl along at the head of affairs. So this could be set up for something coming off the pace. And all in all, I'm just finding it a bit too much of a puzzle at the moment. So I'm going to, if I do get involved, play it late on the prices.
Fair enough. On to the December Gold Cup, and the 150 Thunder Rock is a 7-2 favourite ahead of Monmoral at 11-2. So Scottish 6-1. El Redoto 13-2. Fugitive 8-1. Fakir Duderi 8-1. Frero Bamboo 12-1. 16-1 bar those. Ed, we'll come to you first.
Yeah, I'm 2 versus the field here. When at the shorter prices, I'd rather be with Monmoral of those kind of in single figures. I don't think Thunder Rock, I'm worried about his jumping around Cheltenham. Monmoral, like the race unexposed. You look at 2 of his defeats, second to John Bon, and then second to Real Wacker in the Dipper. Again, that's obviously very good form with those horses going on to score at the top level. Monmoral had Thunder Rock behind him that day in the Dipper. It's been the Dipper, hasn't it? Bin Dipper. They've got rid of it. They've got rid of that race now. But as you say, and Monmoral, who comfortably beat Thunder Rock in the Dipper, he's in receipt of weight this time round. And Paul Nicholls has said it's just been the target for some time. So, and Harry Cobden's obviously elected to ride Monmoral ahead of Il Redoto. So wouldn't be surprised if he went well. But I've got a proper long shot in here. Do your job. I wouldn't be surprised at all. This horse ran a massive race for Lucinda Russell. The Yard on Fire, they had a treble up, didn't they, a couple of days or so ago. And this horse has eased down to a mark of 136 now, starting to look dangerously well handicapped. There is always that worry, 9 rising 10 on the comeback from an injury, whether the old spark does still remain. But the point being, this horse was 146 at his peak, and he's absolutely plummeted down the weight. He's now £4 lower than when he last won a handicap. Cheltenham would be a question mark. Given that he's only had the 1 spin round here, but that was a bit of a tune-up job over the minimum trip. Funnily enough, that Triple Trade race last time out. But 2.5 miles, new course, soft ground, offer pretty much, well, it is a career low chase mark. The Yard on Fire, 10 stone 2. I think he's a big player here. I think they'll ride him totally different to last time as well. He went from the front to try and utilise his stamina, and it backfired. He just got picked up. I think he'll be ridden quietly and creep on the new course here, and I wouldn't be surprised with, let's just say, a featherweight here. He was staying on best when others have cried enough. So yeah, Monmoral, do your job. My 2 versus the field, but do your job very much. My long shot goggles one.
Do your job 33-1 with Paddy Power, who are 4 places, and Betfair also 4 places. A couple of others as well. Monmoral 11-2. Andy.
Yeah, I think it's significant that Fakir Dudaris has stood his ground here. Surely that he's here to keep the weights down for So Scottish. That would be my way of thinking. And Emmett Mullins is becoming a real target trainer, isn't he, over here in the UK, as we know now for the last 2 or 3 years. And he very much had a prep the other day at Gowran Park, didn't he? Over 2 miles. Yeah, that wouldn't have been his bag. He's had a month or so off. They've got the tongue tie on him again. Maybe he might have just his breathing might not have been up to scratch that day. I don't really know. I'm trying to read into what's going on here. But he ran really well for a long way in last year's Festival Plate before the sort of wheels came off him. I think he's a kind of horse to catch this side of the year as well. He's one of those horses that maybe just goes slightly over the top towards the back end of the season. But he's definitely got to be a consideration. And I don't think you can sort of mention a race like this without factoring in Fugitive, who is probably one of the unsung heroes of these kind of events. I don't think he's got his real due rewards for a series of unbelievably strong, solid runs. He clearly loves Cheltenham. He was unlucky. He was robbed really by Seddon. He looked like he was going to beat all ends up in last year's Festival Plate, and then Seddon found another gear. And I thought it was a perfectly respectable run first time. He was the only one of the horses that chased and went with Stage Star to still be there at the last. And he was up against a genuine Grade 1 horse on that occasion, as I pointed out in my Cheltenham Festival preview. And he goes back again for another shot. Soft ground is fine for him. It's hard to see him not running well, Fugitive. I could not have a bet in this race without sticking a few quid on him at 8-1. And I don't think Torn and Frayed was running too bad of a race when he fell at the second last as well. I do think that Stage Star race is a very good race this year. The time figures were one of the best time figures we've got so far this season of any chase. So I think we're going to see plenty win of that out of it. So in short, I think So Scott is very eye-catching, but 8-1 for Fugitive. I'd be surprised if he's not in the first 4, because I imagine most firms will be betting first 4.
Yeah, most are at the moment. Sky Bet paying 5 places as it stands. Fugitive 8-1, Bet Victor, Coral, a couple of other firms as well. Torn and Frayed, as you gave a positive mention for, 16-1 with most, and So Scottish 6-1 with most. On to the 225 now, the Handicap Chase over 3 miles 2. 300 through 5 is the 4-1 favourite, just ahead of Broadway Boy at 9-2. Melina Girl 5-1. Protector at 6-1. City Chief 13-2. Easy as that 9-1. Elvis Mail 10-1. 22-1 bar those. Rapper 22-1. Back on the Lash 28-1. Andy Trappy at the top end of the market. 9 runners here. How do you see it?
Yeah, I think you've got to consider Broadway Boy. Ed's already talked him up. Obviously, we'll get a line through that horse early on the card. We all have been caught. See how he gets on. But there was something really likeable about the way Broadway Boy just ground his opposition into submission here at the last meeting. On quicker ground, he wasn't quite so effective behind Florian Porter, but a genuine test around this track with STD on board. He's going to be a formidable opponent, because I still think he's got plenty of mileage left in him, whereas a lot of these have, been around the block more than a tramp's dog, haven't they? And they tend to sort of. Yeah, I think you have to have a clear mind when you're coming into races like this, an unscrambled mind, and that's what he's got. So I'd have him number 1. Over Easy as That. I think he's an interesting runner from Venetia Williams. Now, this horse was punted at odds in the Paddy Power, but I don't think Charlie Deutsch knew. He didn't read the memo, because normally you get a Venetia horse like this, like Easy as That, who often goes from the front or he's up with the speed. I think he was last early on. He made a couple of niggly mistakes in the home straight, and that manifested into itself as the round went on. He was scruffy here, there, and everywhere. He just didn't look at the races, whether the trip was too short, whether it was almost as if they were prepping him for another race. I thought that the December Gold Cup was his race, because he was entered in that, but they decided to step him up to 3 mile 2 here, in the hope that perhaps an easier rhythm of a 3 mile race will help his jumping a little bit. But I think they'll ride him a little bit more aggressively than they did in that Paddy Power. And he's off 10-2. So I could see him going well at 12-1. I can't resist a little mention of him. I think perhaps Ed's going to give him slightly bigger mention than I am.
Go on, Ed.
No, I'm just totally on board. That would be my looking at the market. I thought Broadway Boy would be strong favourite over 300 through 5 personally. I thought 300 through 5 to defy 150 would take some doing. Broadway Boy on an upward curve. Thought he'd be market leader, and outside of that, I thought, yeah, easy of that. Andy mentioned the trip. I think that's the salient point here. There's the big race at Ascot next weekend, the Sodexo Gold Cup over 3 miles. I thought that might be. I noticed he had an entry in that. So they've obviously been and ahhing what's this horse's kind of trip and where they're going to go. And they're rolling the dice over the Gold Cup trip for the first time. I can only see that suiting. Funnily enough, if you look back at the, all his wins, he's won them by stamina, including when he won at Haydock, which probably wouldn't have been his track last year. He just looked better the further he went over an extended 2.5 on that occasion. Just looked a little bit tap for toe last time out, and he does actually kind of pick up the stragglers up the running. He runs all into 6th in the Paddy Power Gold Cup, which you say 2.5 on the old course, a relative test of speed compared to this. I can only see this race suiting. I think he's a cracking each way bet it around double figures, easy as that. I wouldn't put anyone off Broadway Boy. If they said to me, who do you think? I think he's got to be favourite on default. He's an unexposed 5-year-old who loves soft ground, got plenty of course form, and is jumping for fun. So I'd make Broadway Boy favourite. I wouldn't be shocked if easy of that started half the price he is coming into this, because the weights, everything's skewed by Protectorat, who's the absolute joker in the pack, obviously trying to lump 12 stone around with him, but it feels a bit of a retrieval mission, and it's setting it up for those further down the weights. And so, yeah, easy as that's each way for me in the 225.
Easy as that. 9-1. Paddy Power, Betfair Sportsbook, Bet MGM, and Bet UK. That 9-2 about Broadway Boy has gone as we've been recording. See an oddschecker, 4-1 best price as it stands right now. That's with Sky Bet and Bet MGM and Bet UK. Have we got prices in the last 2? We certainly do in the Albert Bartlett, yes, and also in the final race on the card as well, the Mares Handicap Hurdles. So over 3 miles now, the Albert Bartlett, we've got Shanna Bob is the 7-4 favourite ahead of Don't Destroy the Evidence at 11-2, Illicoda Cot 7-1, Cadell 8-1, 10-1, Kerry Hill 11-1 bar those. Andy, Ed, your face, you're making an extraordinary face. You can't believe this market.
I'm stumped on the last 2 races, to be honest with you. Yeah, I thought Shanna Bob short enough, in my view. 13-8, whole host of unexposed horses. You know, I mean, 6-1 last time out. The old cliche could be anything, but that very much comes into fruition here. And I thought Shanna Bob, looked okay, but was 5s on to win an absolute nothing race at Plumpton last time out. So I'm just surprised. I suppose I'm not surprised because it's Shishkin's colours and it's Nicky Henderson and everything. But my overall emotion was I'm quite surprised to see Shanna Bob as short, having only just seen these prices for the first time, the race for the first time a couple of minutes ago. So, but yeah, no strong views other than that. I think it's just a lot of guesswork here. You don't have a lot you can really quantify. Unexposed type, say half the field won last time out, could improve £10-12 for that run, etc. So I'm very happy to leave this one to Andy.
How dare you tell Andy he can't quantify horses with a couple of runs under their belt? Andy, quantify away, please.
Yeah, I'm actually quite keen on winning this. I've kept my powder dry throughout the week, and I was very tempted to take sort of like the double figure quotes about Kerry Hill, Ruth Jefferson's horse, but I see he's still 10-1 in the reform market. I quite like the shape of the race as well, as Ed said. Like Shanna Bob takes a huge chunk out of it, but he's just hard to quantify that price, given that he was a 5-on shot at Plumpton. Whereas I think Kerry Hill's race that he won at Kelso has got a bit of substance to it, because he beat Cadell, who's one of Lucinda Russell's highly rated young novices, and I thought he did it rather easily. He didn't win by a huge margin, but I thought he had more in hand than official margin suggested. Cadell was flat to the board throughout that race, whereas Kerry Hill absolutely cruised his way through it. And the market very much foretold what was going to happen that day. He was very well backed for a horse having his first run for 203 days for a new setup. He went off 5-2 in a race where, like I said, there was quite a bit of depth. The time figure was very, very good. He's actually top of our figures based on that run. And I think there's going to be more to come from him. He beat a horse called Let's Go Joe as well in an Irish point, who won first time out for Oliver Greenall at Sedgefield the other day. So both of his last 2 races, I think, count for a great deal. He's a 3-mile point-to-point win on heavy ground. Stamina looked to be very much his key component when he won at Kelso the other day. And Ruth Jefferson wouldn't be the type of trainer who would just come down here for a day out. She clearly feels as though this is up to Grade 2 company off the back of off one run, and I tend to agree with her. So 10 to 1, I think Kerry Hill probably, for me personally anyway, represents a really good, probably one of the best bets on the card at the prices anyway, I'd say.
10 runners as it stands, Andy. We've got most firms going a fifth of 3. Sky Bet are going 9 to 1, a fifth of 4. Would you be backing Kerry Hill each way, or would you be backing Kerry Hill win only?
I think I probably would back him each way because he has got a good cruising speed. So I think his class will get him into the thick end of the race. It's on the new course, isn't it? So I think there's a long run from 2 out to the last. I predict him being still bang there, travelling well 2 out. Whether there's 1 or 2 too good for him from that point, I wouldn't know. But he seemed a strong stayer at Kelso, and that's a stiff uphill climb from 2 out there, isn't it? That run from the last. So he's used to running up a hill. So yeah, I'd be mildly confident about him running well. I think he's the surprise package of the race anyway.
There we go. Kerry Hill 10 to 1 with Paddy's and Betfair Sportsbook and a couple of other firms as well. 9 to 1 if you want to make the most of that the 4 places with Sky Bet, as you can see on the oddschecker grids. Finally, in this mammoth Cheltenham preview, we've got the Mayor's Handicap Hurdle with Botany, the 3 to 1 favourite across the board. Nurse Susan 5 to 1, Theatre Glory 11 to 2. Coquilot is 6 to 1. Wind to the Lightning is 7 to 1. Good Luck Charm 9 to 1. Martha Divine 12. Cessful 14. Sainsbury Girl 14. And I Love the Nightlife, named by Andy Holding, 20 to 1. Andy, how do you see the last?
Yeah, I think we've got the right favourite here, Botany. Would like to come up with something a little bit more original, but I love the way that she got the job done at Hereford first time up. She was very well punted. She needed all of the trip to win that day. I think she probably wanted a stiffer track or a stiffer test. But she got the job done. But not only that, she did it in a very fast time. They went an unbelievable gallop that day. There was pace upon pace, layer upon layer. I think it was Kingston Sunflower one off in front. And they gradually dropped away. And there was only 2 or 3 survivors, really. And Botany was the chief beneficiary of that strong pace. I still think she's very well handicapped because she didn't win by a huge margin. She's won at Cheltenham before. I don't think she won an absolute quagmire. She has run well on soft ground before, but she was withdrawn one day on heavy ground. So I don't think she wants extremes. But looking at the forecast, I don't think we're going to get bottomless ground. I think it'll just be nice winter soft, which will be fine for her. But yeah, Fergal doesn't normally leave empty-handed nowadays at Cheltenham, and I don't think he will here with this one as well.
Bonte 3 to 1, as I say, across the board. Ed?
Yeah, I think Bonte's the right favourite. But if I was looking for an each way alternative, Martin Keithley's got Zestful in here, and that's just Sean Bowen's booked for the ride. Went very close at the April meeting, that listed race, funny enough, against a horse with no name. We made an absolute mess of I think it was the last flight of hurdles, or the second last, and lost valuable ground. Had a pipe opener, very much just that. In a swamp at Chepstow last time out over the minimum trip. I think that was just a case of getting around and getting everything back in working order again. This similar to Bonte, really. The step back up in trip with a greater emphasis on stamina is only going to suit Zestful here. So he's run well at the course before and has got a couple of pounds back from the assessor for that reappearance run. Runs off 130, lightly raced 4-year-old. So yeah, I think I'd be going Bonte Zestful versus the field here, but I wouldn't be shocked if you saw more zest from Zestful this time around, funny enough.
Zestful 14 to 1. That is with William Hill standout price. There we have it. Thank you very much to both Andy and to Ed for sharing their thoughts ahead of this weekend's racing at Cheltenham and looking ahead to the festival for us as well before Christmas. We'll be back again soon next week to look at the Christmas racing. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, make sure you download the oddschecker app for the best free bets, bookie offers, place terms, and of course the best prices and Andy's tips, amongst other tipsters, straight to the app every morning of racing. Thanks to Ed, thanks to Andy for getting their Christmas tree up. I'll do my best to do so next week. You have to deal with some football squads instead for the time being. But we'll see you again next week. Enjoy the racing and please do ensure that you gamble responsibly.